if you start telling people to stop fighting, but you're doing it from a place of nafs, it's a fight. You're making more fight. You're making more negativity. You're making people. You're escalating. You're setting up the flight and fight response in other people, and that also propagates. You see so many things on the internet where we've got to stop this war, and it's all the fault of these people. And it makes me so angry. I'm so angry about everything in this war, you know. And yes, we get angry, but what we say and do in our own lives is very important, maybe more important than we think, in terms of how peace comes about.
Thank you. The other part of that is, if you want to be a messenger of peace, you can't be invested in the outcome. It has to come from your heart at the right time in the right way. If it's you being the messenger, then you have expectations that your words will be heard and people will respond to you. And this is all about you and your nafs. You know, I'm being a good person. I'm being spiritual. I'm doing the right thing. That's
only
all
I
you.
can end this war.
I am the messenger of peace. And it doesn't work because it's about you. To do it without expectation or investment requires you to not be there, but to have your heart speak. For the heart to speak, you have to be out of the way and let the heart do what it needs to do in its way. And not to have expectations about what that might look like. See, the heart has more knowledge than our brain. It's connected to the metaverse, to the universe, to everything. And if we put our expectations on what the message should be, we're limiting it.
I was going to say that's another reason why stories are so good, because they have that shape where they inherently bring out things in a different way that are not the way you expect.
The good Sufi stories are very much like the koans. They push you into a different state of thinking because they're not linear, they're lateral. And you have to make a leap of consciousness, or in doing so, make you laugh. When I can make you laugh with my story, I've cut around the self and hit a point of understanding that's different. That's why comedians are very important. And a lot of them, most of them have been Jewish.
Well, speaking of stories, do you have a good story to tell us today that we can hopefully use every day?
The first one that comes to mind is just a really simple one. Nasruddin trying to get across a river. He's fallen in a couple times. As he gets across, you know, he's trying to get on the stones, but slips off the stones, again falls in. By the time he's on the other side of the river, so he's standing there soaking wet, and this guy coming out, and he says, "Hey, Nasruddin," because he recognized him, says, "Yeah, what? How do you get across the river?" And Nasruddin looks at him and goes, "You are across."
That makes me think of the Rumi poem too, Sheikh. The man knocks at the door. The beloved's inside and says, "Who is it?" He goes, "It's me." And the beloved says, "There's no room here for you and me." And so he knocks again and says, "Who is it?" He goes, "It's you."
And lets him in.
And then he's let in.
Yeah. And of course Hafez has lots of poems about what is this you and me. If you want to be of service, the first thing is getting yourself out of the way. Like I say, if it's you trying to help somebody, there's no room there. That's not going to work. There has to be a know you.
But another way of of saying that, maybe Sheikh as well, be if you're focusing on the me and you, then there's going to be conflict. If you're focusing on Allah, because conflict is about agendas, right? I want this, you want that. But if you focus on Allah, it's like, well, Allah only wants one thing, because Allah is unity. There can't be conflict if we're both focused on unity, on Allah. Like if we're with Allah, there can't be any conflict because we're in unity. There's only one will in that case.
If you want action and want to do something, I think one of the best things to do is to eat together. When people can have a meal and sit down and get to know each other, a lot of good can happen from that. And probably avoiding 2 topics for the time of the feeding, and that is no politics and no religion. It worked in my family.
You made me think of there's a show on the ABC called Kitchen Cabinet. Annabelle Crabb, who's a journalist here in Australia, she has a show where she goes round to the houses of the politicians who are currently in power. They cook a meal with her and they have a meal together. And she uses it as a way of kind of, I suppose, humanizing these people and, also possibly, I mean, she doesn't avoid politics some of the time. But in a different, it does really give the whole of a discussion a different frame where it's less about a power struggle. When you're together sharing a meal, there's a different emphasis.
Makes you human.
Makes you human. Yeah, that's basically it. Because it's even I remember thinking she did Peter Dutton, in Australia, and without actually going into the politics of it, he's not someone that he's someone I have trouble as seeing as a human, personally. And by the end of it, I was like, oh, Annabelle Crabb, I'm almost angry with you because now I'm seeing as a human being instead of a force of evil. And I had to admit that I was very prejudiced about who he was because of the political stances that he takes. And that was very interesting to me to have that experience of having your assumptions challenged. It's very important. We make a lot of assumptions.
I think that it's important to assume that we have tons of biases, mores, taboos, all kinds of little boxes that we don't even know that are Tetrising in the background. Approaching things, other people in that way to understand that we're not perfect. And we carry around all of these biases and bigotry in us, and we ignore it. If it comes up, we don't even see it. But it's easier to see in other people. So we tend to revile other people who carry our contradictions.
Mirrors hurt.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we would rather not see that, or it angers us because it's us. Is this helpful, Batul?
Yes, absolutely. Great recommendations there. I'm definitely going to watch the Three Kings movie tonight.
Is that with George Clooney?
Yeah.
Oh, that was that was good.
Yeah. I don't know if I told you, but my background's Iraqi, so it would be nice to see it.
I was just going to say, yeah, just be like, just a warning, it's quite violent. Like, but yeah, also it's the original war, like the Kuwait invasion. It's around that time. I wish someone had done a satire on the recent ones because one of the things I've noticed is there are 1,000 movies about Vietnam and there are only a few about what happened in the noughties in Afghanistan and Iraq. And I think that's suspicious. Just in terms of, like, it would be really interesting to see a bit more artistic treatment of that subject and get some people to tell some good stories of what happened there, because we need to learn. But that's just
I'm not sure there's a lot about the 2003 war, but I think I've seen a couple about the 2014, with the ISIS. There's definitely some stuff out
right. Yeah.
But that little buffer in the middle, people just tend to not want to talk about.
I mean, you can understand people not wanting to talk about war as well. It makes sense.
But lesson learned might be a good way to approach it.
Science fiction or speculative fiction helps look at those things objectively without offending anybody. I was influenced enormously by The Twilight Zone, which was all about social change, by Rod Serling. Because it was the 50s he was writing in, and the McCarthy era, and communism and blackballing and pinko communist kind of thing. He couldn't write what he wanted to write. So he created these stories. They were social commentaries, but they were done in such a way as to be either funny or sci-fi, but they were real comments on what was happening in society at that time. And they were well done and just fantastic observations about conflict and about ego and about people being people. So Batul, as a writer, I am encouraging you to write the stories that need to be told. That's part of Sufism.
Yeah, that's where I'm heading at the moment, hopefully.
Batul, were you in Iraq during the recent war period?
No, I left. We left in 2009, and I was quite young, in the early 2000s, so I don't really remember much of it. I think my parents would be more interesting to talk about this. They kind of seen it all.
They would remember the invasion, wouldn't they? Yeah.
They remember everything, like from the rise of Saddam to his fall. So
wow,
a lot
that's a really
interesting stories. A lot of interesting stories. Yeah, my dad always talks about it.
Well, there's a resource right there.
Well, we've got the same thing here in Australia too. With obviously we haven't had enough stories yet about what happened here because people don't seem to get it.
Yeah, with the voice and stuff. The current.
Yeah, I'm trying not to talk about it, but
yeah,
I find that very sad, and I think it is like you're saying, Sheikh. It's about telling stories that reach people's hearts, because when it's all up here and it's all naffs, it's so easy for it to be about tribes and us and them, and about protecting your own interests and the interests of your friends and your political interests and all that kind of stuff. But when there's a story, it's hard to deny.
Does there need to be an intention by the person that's hearing the story for that to kind of come through, or any sort of, I guess, peacemaking activity?
Oh, that reminds me of a story. Now, the idea is to lead you into a new train of thought. And as you know, think about a comedian coming into an audience and telling a joke or a story. The people are there to be entertained, and you're there, if you're the comedian, the stand-up comic, or whatever, you're there to fulfill their expectations of, I want to have a good time. It doesn't mean I can't change your mind. And when you think about some of the great comedians, including Richard Pryor and Lenny Bruce and Shelley Berman, even Robin Williams, They were there to change people's minds, but that was their way to do
George
it.
Carlin.
Oh, yeah. George Carlin, John Stewart.
It's interesting how, like so many, you see, this is progress where you see, like, at first it's a comedian making fun of themselves, like, and they might be a gay comedian or a black comedian or something like that. And then from being the laughed at character, they start becoming an accepted character. And then a character who's seen as a human, with rights, like I'm just thinking of the way that civil rights in the United States and gay rights and all that kind of stuff. There was a period where, people wanted to laugh at gay people and black people and anybody who was other. And then the comedians kind of use that as a way to generate empathy over time. And then it becomes real empathy. And then it becomes, well, if this person's human, why are we treating them like this?
Well said. There's a transition point. And I think, first of all, taking on the aegis of look at me, look at my problems, look at my silliness, becomes a fulcrum. That's a good point.
And same things happen like over the last 20 years, I'd say, with like neurodivergent comedians, really similar. Like you've had people, look at me, I've got autism or I'm an ADHD guy, and then slowly it's like, oh, yeah, you really do have this thing and that must make it hard for you. Or, yeah. And all the Jewish comedians, like you said before, like after the war and even during that time when all the race hatred was going on, they could get to people in a different way.
Yeah, the approach for Jewish comedy is, well, I can cry about it or I can laugh about it. The choice was to laugh about it. Doesn't mean you don't hurt. It just means I can choose how to deal with this.
There's alchemy in laughter.
There's things change when that happens. Or any kind of strong emotion like grief or pain of, like, you have a character in your story that's killed or that dies or it has a disease. You are creating a through line that people can change how they see this. And this also works in any of the art forms, whether it's painting, films, music, dance, anything. And in Sufism, we have all of those, including movement with the sama, with the dervishes. If you have a strong kinesthetic sense, we have sama for you, turning. If you have painting, well, there's calligraphy and there's all kinds of art forms to work with. There's also music, and we have Ilahis and filmmaking. There's all kinds of stories. There's a couple one with Michael Douglas in it about a Sufi. Romancing the Stone and its sequel. They're trying to find a jewel, but the jewel turns out to be this master Sufi that they rescue. So it's in all the arts, but hidden away. As Rumi says, Sufism is open secret. It's there if you're looking for it, but it's not there if you're not looking for it. You can't see it. So, Batul, there's many ways to approach changing how people see themselves and others, but it's a process, not a fix.
Something else I'd like to share about the time I've been spending up in South Grafton. You can go into a community or a group of people or where you see issues with a desire to help. It's a two-way thing. So you go in and intending to help, and sometimes you get helped more. Or you get transformed in the process. What you thought was going on is not necessarily what is going on. With the idea of not trying to fix things, because when you go in before you have context and you're not in that situation and you don't know, with those people, you don't understand them, you can't help. How could you possibly help? You can learn, like you can go in and learn about a place and a people and a way of being that's different to yours, and then maybe you can become part of a solution, but you're not. It's not something that comes from you and gets given to others. It's something that transforms the two people, the two, or the more than two.
This is almost like art.
Yeah.
Art is allowing yourself to be transformed in the process. You can't be you at the end of this. Something has to change. And if you're willing to do that, that's great. But the first thing to do is examine. This is hard. This is really hard to do, but to objectively look at your expectations. What am I expecting at the outcome of this? That these people will change? Or I wonder how I'm going to change in this process.
Yeah, and what I'm going to learn and how I'm going to see things differently.
And this, to me, this is kind of the definition of what makes it art, in the sense that you go into a place that is unknown to you, which first of all requires some courage, idiocy, and innocence.
Naivety.
Naivete is a big helping there, big helping on the plate. And you go in and you go, all right, I found something and I want to bring it back alive. To take it back, I'm going to have to go back through the primeval forest of symbols and energies and taboos and expectations and nefs. And I come out of this and I go, here, this helps me understand you, and maybe it will help you understand us. This thing, this art thing, which is very similar to therapy. This is my little narrow-minded world here. So what's the difference between therapy and art? The art is something that is shareable, that helps us understand the human experience, and maybe the human and divine experience. And therapy helps me change me. It's about me. Sometimes it's both. But that's my narrow-minded view of things. What do you think?
There's definitely a crossover between therapy and art. Well, art definitely is healing in some contexts and in some ways, and healing definitely uses a lot of the tools of art.
It can be healing, yes. I think acknowledging that we're grieving, that this is painful, this hurts. It hurts to see people hurting each other. And to see it objectively, and also to know there's so much more behind this than what we see. Like I was saying before, the truth behind this is so complicated and so deep and goes back thousands of years that to look at this in this one snapshot is a lie, basically. You're not seeing the thing for what it is.
We also don't know where it's going to end up.
But we can pray, and we can be an example of what peace looks like. And we can do that both within ourselves and with each person we meet. If you want peace in the world, you have to work on this by each person that you meet, because that's within our grasp. That's within our hands. That's within our proximity. The rest of that is people being people, or monkeys being monkeys, however you want to look at that. What do you think, Batul?
Amen. I think it's approachable, and it keeps you in check with your sanity, because if we try to change the whole world, it's too big of a task for anyone to do.
Yes.
So yeah, I absolutely think we should take it one person at a time, starting with ourselves.
Yeah. And if you want to write stories, I wrote a song called When I'm Emperor of the World. Everyone will be a friend, and just making fun of myself and just laughing at it.
I write poetry sometimes as well.
There you go.
Yeah, so it's definitely healing, going back to that art therapy approach.
Doing what you need to do, what your strengths are.
But I think educating ourselves is also important, because we can't just write stories from air. We have to know what we're writing about, because it is kind of a capsule that, I don't know, represents the certain social and cultural context that we're trying to talk about. Even though it's subjective, I think education is a really important part, which is doable through many examples that you have given us, including art.
Yeah. Anything that helps you know the truth, the hakika, the reality of what this is important if you want to step into it, if you feel your heart's bringing you there. I mean, whose heart isn't broken by what's happening? It's so you can choose how to deal with it. And that is part of learning how to be a human being. You don't have to be controlled by your emotions. It doesn't mean that you're not going to feel. It means you have to acknowledge what those feelings are and then choose how you want to deal with them, rather than being a slave to feelings. You can feel, and then you can go, well, here's what I want to do about that. Or here's an attitude I can take with that. Here's how I can make changes that will help me heal, or help me improve, or help me understand. And like I say, humor is really important here, because if you take things too seriously, I mean, it's a comedy in one view, a Punch and Judy show. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen Rahman Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta alayhim ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Amen. Shukran, madad.
Assalamu Alaikum, everybody.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you. Bye-bye. Salaam Alaykum, murids, seekers, curious, and interested listeners. We appreciate you and are happy to share our Sufi message. Your donation will help support our Sufi Center in Sydney, where we do zikr, sohbet, spiritual counseling, and healing services. We believe the message should be free, but it costs equipment, rental, services, software, and hardware to get this to you. So thank you for choosing our podcast among all the millions available. If you go to our website, AnsariSufiOrder.org, you will be able to donate through PayPal whatever you think this information is worth to you. Blessings and love, the Australian Ansari Sufi Order.